What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We have a little thing to talk about here today, and normally I do some of these sit down interviews for breaking news and other situations that may possibly pop up in the association or in any of the other leagues. But it's going to kind of be one that we're going to sit down and talk about a little bit, just because rumors are swirling, and kind of want to create my own separate video on this outside of the podcast. And it pertains to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA. Now, we all know the Cleveland Cavaliers throughout our time because of LeBron James being there, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love, all winning the title back in 2016 with this team. Now, kind of the idea of the Cleveland Cavaliers post LeBron was, okay, let's reset, let's get these assets, and let's move on forward with some of these future pieces. Colin Sexton being one big one, another one potentially being Lauri Markkanen. Right, you're in this situation where now you don't have any of those pieces, but you've been able to stock up and find even better pieces. The young core of Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, now Donovan Mitchell coming in as well, has been fantastic for this team. And now kind of even looking at it even more into the future, some start to wonder what's really been going on with this team and what's kind of been the situation kind of happening throughout Cleveland. Well, we're here to break it down just a little bit here in this short video. This is your Sports Digest short video film, I guess. I don't know what this could be called. I'm Alex McNinch. So let's start with the timeline that is just now happening here. As of this week, two major injuries to this roster. Darius Garland fracturing his jaw, going to be out multiple weeks, according to Adrian Wojnarowski and Shams Charania, obviously the two very reliable sources within the NBA. But then after this news comes out, there's another bit of news that comes out as well, and that is Evan Mobley, who has missed, I believe, the past 4 or 5 games with knee soreness, is going to end up getting his knee scoped out. Will be out 6 to 8 weeks, it's saying. So now you're down without your 2-star young talents for an extended period of time. And some start to wonder what's been going on. Why are the Cavs not as good? If anybody remembers when they made this move for Donovan Mitchell a few off seasons ago, everyone sat down and was like, wow, this is where it happens. This is the Cavs pushing in their chips and being able to create this young core, but also combine it with a young superstar as well in Donovan Mitchell. And it just didn't work out last year. And to start this year, it just hasn't worked as a whole. Now, you can kind of look at some of the situations that have come about for this Cavs team. You're paying all of your starters ridiculous amount of money. So now you're forced to not have as many depth pieces, or if you're having depth pieces, they're not going to be as good as depth pieces as you are hoping that they may end up being. But kind of just looking at it a little bit more, we all understand that Donovan Mitchell's contract comes up here in the next couple of years. He has a player option come the 2025 off season, going into 2026. And I think it's very, very known that everyone is aware Donovan Mitchell will opt out of that. Not saying he doesn't like Cleveland, not saying he's not enjoying his time, but I think everybody understands that this is a big market player in Donovan Mitchell, and especially a New York Knick in Donovan Mitchell. Now, I'm not saying that, I hope that this happens so that we can create a team in New York and all this type of stuff. I'm just saying, I think everyone as NBA fans can really realize that this is the potential chance that this actually happens here in the next upcoming years. So if you're Cleveland, you got to look at this situation and think, well, do we get rid of this piece and cash in our prize? Or do we hold off and hope that he enjoys it, hope that we succeed, and continue to move on? Well, you've been able to surround some pieces. You've re-signed Karis LeVert this past year. You brought in Max Strus for a really, really solid contract for the production he's given you. Obviously, you weren't expecting him to give you this production this early with all the injuries, but you've got that as well. And then you've brought in some other minimum contract players to kind of fill in those roles as role players and bench pieces for you as well. But it just hasn't really worked out so far in these first 2 years, and there's a lot of questions. Easily the one to look at is Coach J.B. Bickerstaff, looking ahead there at his coaching potential hot seat with this team if things don't get to change. And you might be wondering, well, what exactly is J.B. Bickerstaff doing that may be ruining this lineup or holding back this team from being their best possible form of themselves. Well, as a Memphis Grizzlies fan, I repeat it all the time. Big Grizzly fan. JB Bickerstaff was the head coach and interim head coach for our team for a year and a half until he eventually was fired. He was the head coach of the team that ended up winning the lottery and, well, getting second in the lottery and eventually drafting Ja Morant. He did not make it to see Ja Morant on the team, but he was a part of Jaren Jackson's rookie year and was a part of all that situation as well after David Fizdale was fired from the organization. Now, obviously, the Grizzlies were supposed to be terrible, right? But the way that things were handled as a coach and rotations and the players he played were very, very questionable. And that's what led a lot of the Grizzly fans into wondering why would he even get a head coaching job for this team. Now looking ahead here with Cleveland, he's got every young asset that he could possibly want. Garland, Mitchell, Strus and LeVert as your pairing too. Even Okoro you can throw in there. Mobley and Jarrett Allen. And things just haven't worked out. I don't know if it's a scheme thing necessarily. Is it playing the right guys? Is it playing guys too many minutes? Is it the substitutions he makes? I knew that was a big thing in Memphis. He played Shelvin Mack way too many minutes when it should have been, hey, this is Mike Conley's farewell tour pretty much. Everybody knew Mike Conley was gone after the season and he was going to get traded. So this is Mike Conley's farewell tour. Let's give him all the minutes he can. Hey, Jaren Jackson Jr., let's not start him. Let's start Bruno Caboclo over him. Like, some of those decisions were questionable from JB Bickerstaff now. Obviously, with the injuries, he's forced to throw in a hand that he may not want to use. And one of the big issues is Dean Wade being your starting small forward, power forward for this team. And this is nothing against Dean Wade at all. He is a fine NBA player, but he is not a starting NBA player. He is a bench role player, and I think he understands that. I think everybody understands that in that organization. And as a Cavs fan, or not me, but as Cavs fans, they probably understand that as well. And, you know, when you're looking at this group, you got to space the floor enough. Mobley wasn't spacing it too much. Jarrett Allen obviously will not space it at all. So you bring in Dean Wade to start, and obviously that'll space the floor, but you can look at a guy maybe on the bench as Georges Niang that could space it a little bit better. Or, you know, that could pretty much be your other option. Or you run really small and try to find a way Isaac Okoro can come on there for some defense. There's a lot of questions, but I don't really know that to the extent. But let's go into stuff that I do know, which are stats. And if you look at these stats, it's pretty alarming when thinking of JB Bickerstaff-led teams here in Cleveland. In the last 3 years under JB Bickerstaff, they are 25th in scoring in the entire NBA in points per game at 110. In the past 3 years, they have been 25th in each year. They are bottom 5 in pace in the past 2 years. And pace, obviously, in today's NBA game, a very, very important thing to have as a team. A lot of teams are running up and down the court. Some teams like to get into a 5-on-5 half-court game, but it's all about pace in the regular season, trying to outpace the other team. And if you don't have a good pace, it's obviously going to reflect into your offensive output. So they're bottom 5 in pace in the past 2 years since Donovan Mitchell has come over here. Obviously, Mitchell being an ISO player, that also leans into it as well. They were a minus 0.4 net rating this year. Not good. Not good if you're in the negatives. That means you're not great. 26th in three-point percentage this year at 34.5%. Now, I'm a fan of a team that shoots worse than that, and it's really bad. Let alone this team is still winning games and shooting that bad is saying something. That they're really not that far off, but it's been an issue. Defense is never going to be an issue truly with Mobley and Allen on the court at all times. Okoro coming in as well. JB Bickerstaff, no doubt can coach defense. We have seen that before, but there's a reason he was let go in Houston. There's a reason he didn't stick around for a rebuild in Memphis, and there's a reason that he might not make it much longer here in Cleveland. I'm not putting all the blame on him, but it seems like a lot of Cavs fans are calling for his head after this situation. You're looking at all these things and the hand that they have to play, all the cards that they're having to use. It brings up the big question. I can't remember exactly what Cavs fan account or podcast account said this on Twitter, and I could not agree more. And they brought up the idea, did the Cavs make the splash move way too early? And I would agree with that. I read it and I was like, you know what? I think they might be onto something a little bit here. Because if you look at a lot of these teams that are like, hey, we're one piece away from making it. We're one piece away. We're one move away, right? It's just never it never works out when they're this young. And now you made a move for Donovan Mitchell before you paid Mobley, before you truly ended up paying Garland as well, right? You're making all of these moves, and you cash in all your chips. Sure, it's only Sexton and who else? I mean, Lauri Markkanen. Like, those were your chips. And as great as it would be, like, I think you might have given up on that Sexton and Garland backcourt a little too soon. And looking how Lauri Markkanen has thrived in Utah as the number one option, maybe you gave up on him a little too soon. You had him under contract for multiple years. You had Colin Sexton's bird rights and free agency. Like, there's a chance that you could have just easily 100% kept those two and build that depth around all of those guys and Mobley and Allen, and then get these younger guys. You were going to have LeVert and Okoro and Ricky Rubio and all these other dudes. And I start to wonder, maybe did they give up a little bit too much too soon? You see a lot of these teams, and again, I keep referencing my own team because this is what I know the most. There's a reason the Grizzlies haven't made that big splash move until this past year. They trying to get Mikal Bridges, right? Because Ja, Dez, and Jaren just weren't ready to get that extra piece yet. We saw the hill and the upwards climb, but we couldn't get over that peak yet. And once we got to that top of the hill where nowhere else could climb, we knew that was the time to make the move. If you're Cleveland, you didn't even get a chance to really even climb that hill. You were just starting to look up and see, hey, maybe one day we can get up there. We're starting to get there. I see the foundation for us to get up there. They went ahead and jumped ship to get on ahead early, and it might backfire at them pretty quickly. Now, if you're trading Donovan Mitchell, you're going to get a hefty package, obviously, as well. But the thing for Cleveland, you're going to need that draft capital because you've given up a lot of it in order to get Donovan Mitchell as well. But you have all these other pieces. I mentioned Isaac Okoro, who was drafted in the lottery, in the top 10, rather, for Cleveland just a few years ago. Hasn't really found his stride with the team. Struggles to shoot, but no doubt, great on-ball defender as well. I think it hasn't just worked out there. Maybe a change of scenery could help him out, but it's a lot of questions kind of surrounding this Cavs team. Maybe they made the move way too early and way too soon. There's a reason the Warriors never made a move with the Steph, Clay, and Draymond situation. They never ended up making that move. In fact, they got rid of Monte Ellis to free up space for other players to flourish. They got rid of Harrison Barnes eventually. Then that's when they bring in Kevin Durant and make that final move, even though they had just won the title 2 years prior. You're making these other moves on top of it to get to that point to where, hey, these guys are ready. Let's make that final push. And whether J.B. Bickerstaff as the head coach is the answer or not, it's up in question. That'll definitely be determined throughout this year. He has his work cut out for him as the injuries roll on. But it's going to be a big question here coming down close to the offseason. What's going to happen? Do they go ahead and move Donovan Mitchell and not even worry about dealing with his contract extension or him leaving for nothing in free agency? Because if they traded Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, and all of that pick and draft capital for 3 years or 4 years of Donovan Mitchell and you never get anything out of it, that could be one of the biggest flops in NBA history within a trade, giving up two perennial all-stars, one being an all-star, the other one, if he's a starter full-time, has shown in Utah over the past couple of weeks that he can be a starter full-time, averaging 27 in the starting lineup. He could be that all-star level player everybody expected him to be coming out of Alabama. Did you end up giving up too much and losing a lot in order to sell your soul to get that superstar? And I think Cleveland fans could side with this a little bit. Cleveland fans could disagree as well. But there's no doubt that something could be happening on the horizon for the Cleveland Cavaliers and their organization. And maybe they might have pushed their chips in way too soon.